The millionaire changes his life forever after black beggar saves paralyzed child. Frederick Thornton, yeah, the Frederick Thornton, the guy with the mansion bigger than your whole town, had his world flipped upside down. And get this, it all started with a kid, Lily, who looked like she'd been fighting the wind all her life, and her little brother, Theo, who needed a wheelchair just to get around. Now Frederick, he was a stone-cold kinda guy. Made his millions, lost his wife, and basically locked himself away in that giant house, Willow Creek Manor. Days were all about business. Nights were about staring at the dark. Until Lily and Theo showed up. Their mom cleaned for Thornton's housekeeper, Mrs. Gable, and they were just trying to beat the summer heat. Then it happened. Theo, bless his heart, somehow slipped and went headfirst into the deep end of the pool. Couldn't move, couldn't scream. Lily, skinny little thing, didn't even hesitate. She jumped in after him. Panic City. She was trying to keep him afloat, but she was barely bigger than him. Both were going down, coughing, gasping. It was a nightmare unfolding in broad daylight. That's when Frederick, drawn by the screaming, came running. Saw the whole thing, didn't even think. He dove in, pulled them both out like they were rag dolls. Theo wasn't breathing. Frederick, who probably hadn't touched another human being in years, started CPR. Finally, Theo coughed up water, his eyes wide with terror. Frederick just knelt there, soaked and shaking, staring at these two kids. Lily, all bruised and brave, clutching her brother. Theo, pale and fragile, clinging to Lily like she was his lifeline. Something cracked inside Frederick right then and there. Years of ice just melted. He got them inside, wrapped them in towels, made them hot chocolate. Sounds corny, right? But this was Frederick Thornton we're talking about. The guy who probably hadn't made hot chocolate since he was a kid. That night, back in his study, he couldn't shake it off. Lily's fierce eyes, Theo's trembling hands. He saw himself, maybe, vulnerable, scared. Then the phone rang. It was Evelyn, his sister-in-law. She hated him, always had. "Frederick," she hissed, her voice like nails on a chalkboard. "Playing the hero now, are we? Don't think this changes anything. We all know what you're capable of. And those kids? Pawns, just like everything else with you." He slammed the phone down, heart hammering. What did she know? What was she implying? Those kids? They were just a means to an end, weren't they? He stared out at the moonlit gardens. A chill running down his spine. Saving those kids had changed things all right. He just didn't know how dangerous things were about to get. Ei, antes de continuarmos com essa história incrível, preciso te fazer alerta importante. Muitos inscritos têm relatado que o YouTube removeu suas inscrições sem aviso. Dá só uma conferida rápida no botão vermelho aí embaixo para garantir que você ainda está inscrito no canal. Não quero que você perca nenhum conteúdo exclusivo que vem por aí. E já que você está aí, deixa aquele like poderoso que me ajuda muito com o algoritmo. Ah, e me conta nos comentários de qual cidade você está assistindo. Adoro conhecer cada pessoa incrível que faz parte dessa comunidade. Sua participação faz toda a diferença. Vamos interagir. He stared at the moonlit gardens, a chill running down his spine. Saving those kids had changed things all right. He just didn't know how dangerous things were about to get. The next morning, he woke up feeling different. lighter somehow. He actually went downstairs for breakfast, something Mrs. Gable hadn't witnessed in years. He even smiled at her, a real smile. "Morning, Maggie," he said, surprising them both. He spent the day with Lily and Theo, playing board games, reading stories. He even tried to fly a kite with Theo in his wheelchair, which ended in a tangled mess and a lot of laughter. It was nice, normal, something he hadn't felt in forever. That evening, Lily came to him, her small face serious. "Mr. Thornton?" she asked, tugging on his sleeve. "Can I ask you something?" He knelt down, his heart clenching a little. "Anything, Lily. Do you know why Theo can't walk?" He hesitated. He knew Theo had been born with some kind of spinal issue, but he didn't know the specifics. He has a problem with his legs, honey. The doctors are trying to help." Lily shook her head. "No, Mama says it's because of you." Frederick felt like he'd been punched in the gut. What are you talking about?" Her eyes welled up. "Mama says, she says you hurt him a long time ago. That's why we have to be nice to you, so you don't hurt him again." The room started to spin. He grabbed onto the back of a chair to steady himself. This couldn't be happening. It just couldn't. "Lily," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "That's not true. I would never hurt a child." But even as he said the words, a flicker of something terrible, stirred in the back of his mind. A forgotten memory, buried deep under years of regret and denial. A memory of a car accident, a dark road, a small figure. He stumbled back, his hand flying to his head. The images were blurry, disjointed, but the overwhelming feeling of guilt and horror was unmistakable. He remembered now. He'd been drinking too much, driving too fast. He'd hit someone. He'd panicked, driven away. He'd used his money, his power, to bury it all, to make it disappear. And Theo, Lily's little brother, he was the one he'd hit. The truth slammed into him like a tidal wave, crushing him under its weight. He was the reason Theo was in a wheelchair. He was the monster Evelyn had always accused him of being. He looked at Lily, her innocent eyes filled with a mixture of fear and confusion. He wanted to tell her it wasn't true, to deny it with every fiber of his being. But he couldn't, because deep down he knew it was. He knew. Suddenly, the front door burst open, and Mrs. Gable rushed in, her face ashen. "Mr. Thornton, the police, they're here to see you." He didn't even have time to react. Two uniformed officers appeared behind her, their faces grim. "Frederick Thornton," one of them said, his voice cold and official. "You're under arrest for attempted murder." Attempted murder? What? He hadn't... Then he saw them, two more officers, carrying Theo. He was unconscious, his face pale, and lying on the floor near the pool, a small silver knife. He looked from Theo to the knife, then back at Lily, who was staring at him with an expression he couldn't quite decipher. Was it fear? Or something else? He didn't have time to figure it out. The officers were handcuffing him, leading him away. As he was being dragged out the door, he saw Evelyn standing on the porch, a smug smile on her face. And that's when he realized this wasn't just about an old accident. This was something much bigger, something much more sinister. Someone was setting him up. But who? And why? And what did Lily have to do with it all? They shoved him in the back of the cruiser, the cold metal biting into his wrists. He saw Maggie Gable's tear-streaked face in the window, mouthing something he couldn't hear. Then the world blurred into streaks of light as they sped away from Willow Creek Manor. Attempted murder? On Theo? With a knife? It made no sense. He'd been framed, and framed good. But by who? And Evelyn, that smug look on her face. She knew something, definitely. At the station, they threw him in a cell. Cold, damp, smelled like stale cigarettes and despair. He sat there, head in his hands, trying to piece it all together. The accident, Lily and Theo, Evelyn, the knife. It was a twisted puzzle, and he was missing half the pieces. Hours crawled by. Then the guard rattled the bars. "Thornton, you got a visitor." He expected his lawyer, maybe. But it was Lily. She stood there, small and fragile, looking up at him with those intense eyes. He swallowed hard. "Lily, what are you doing here? You shouldn't be here." "I had to see you," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "I had to tell you." He leaned closer, heart pounding. "Tell me what, honey?" She hesitated, then took a deep breath. "It wasn't you, Mr. Thornton. It was Mama." He stared at her, stunned. "Your mom? What are you saying?" "Mama told me to do it," she said, tears streaming down her face. "She said you were a bad man, that you hurt Theo a long time ago. She said if I wanted to protect Theo, I had to put the knife near him and say you did it." He couldn't breathe. Lily's mom? Framing him for attempted murder? But why? Why, Lily? Why would she do that? Lily sniffled, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. She said you owed her, that you took something from her a long time ago, and now she was taking something from you. Suddenly, a memory flashed through his mind. A name, a face, a young woman with fiery red hair, working as a waitress at a diner he used to frequent. Sarah. Sarah Miller. He'd had a brief fling with her, years ago, before he met his wife. Could Lily's mom be Sarah? But what did he take from her? Then it hit him. Sarah had told him she was pregnant. He'd dismissed it, assumed she was trying to trap him. He'd given her some money, told her to get rid of it. He hadn't thought about her since. Lily's mom was Sarah, and Theo was his son. Realization slammed into him like a freight train. He'd unknowingly nearly killed his own son, and now his son's mother was framing him for attempted murder. He looked at Lily, her face etched with fear and confusion. He had to protect her. He had to protect them both. "Lily," he said, his voice urgent, "you need to tell the police everything you just told me. Everything. Do you understand?" She nodded, tears still flowing. But Mama will be mad." "I'll protect you from your mom," he said. "I promise. Just tell the truth." Then the guard came back. "Time's up, kid." Lily looked at him one last time, her eyes filled with a fragile hope. Then she was gone. He sat back on the cot, reeling. He knew he had to clear his name, but he couldn't just rely on Lily's testimony. He needed proof. He needed to find Sarah, to understand why she was doing this. He closed his eyes, trying to think. He had to get out of here. He had to find Sarah. He had to protect his children. And then he knew what he had to do. He had to call Evelyn. As much as he hated her, She was his only hope. She knew something. He could feel it. And maybe, just maybe, she could help him unravel this twisted web of lies. But could he trust her? And what price would she demand for her help? And then he knew what he had to do. He had to call Evelyn. As much as he hated her, she was his only hope. She knew something. He could feel it. And maybe, just maybe, she could help him unravel this twisted web of lies. But could he trust her? And what price would she demand for her help? He practically ripped the phone off the wall. The guard grumbled something about one call only, but Frederick ignored him. He dialed Evelyn's number, hand shaking so bad he almost missed the last digit. She picked up on the third ring. "Well, well, well," she drawled, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Look who's calling." "Thought you were too good for family, Frederick." "Evelyn, listen to me," he said, his voice tight with desperation. "I'm being framed for attempted murder. You have to help me." She laughed, a cold, brittle sound. "And why would I do that, after everything you've done?" "Because you know something," he pleaded. "About Sarah, about Theo. You know more than you're letting on. Please, Evelyn. This is about a child's life. My child's life." There was a long silence. He could practically hear her thinking, weighing her options. Finally, she spoke, her voice low and serious. "Meet me, midnight, Old Blackwood Mill, alone. And don't bring the cops." He hung up, heart pounding. Blackwood Mill? That place was a ghost town, abandoned for years. What was Evelyn up to? The hours until midnight stretched on forever. He paced the cell, going over everything in his mind. Sarah, Theo, the accident, Evelyn. It was all connected, he just couldn't see how. Finally, the guard unlocked the cell. "You got bail," he said, shoving some papers at Frederick. "Don't get any funny ideas." He didn't bother asking who posted bail. He knew it had to be Evelyn. He signed the papers, walked out of the station, and jumped into the waiting car. A driver he didn't recognize sped off into the night. Blackwood Mill loomed in the distance, a dark silhouette against the moonlit sky. As they pulled up to the crumbling gates, Frederick felt a chill run down his spine. This was a trap, he knew it. But he had no choice. He got out of the car, telling the driver to wait. He walked through the gates, his footsteps echoing in the silence. The mill was even creepier up close, its windows like empty eyes staring out into the darkness. Evelyn was waiting for him inside, standing in the middle of the dusty main room. She was dressed in black, her face pale and drawn in the dim light. "You came," she said, her voice flat. "What do you know, Evelyn?" he demanded. "Tell me everything." She sighed, shaking her head. "You always were so impatient. Frederick, you never wanted to hear the whole story. Just tell me." "All right," she said, taking a deep breath. "Sarah and I, we were friends. Best friends. Before you came along and ruined everything." He stared at her, confused. "What are you talking about?" "You seduced her, Frederick. You got her pregnant, then you threw her away like trash. She was heartbroken. She never got over it." "I didn't know," he protested. "She never told me, not really." "She tried," Evelyn hissed. "You wouldn't listen. And when she finally gave birth to Theo, she was alone. She struggled. She worked herself to the bone to provide for him. And all the while, she hated you. She blamed you for everything. "But why frame me now?" he asked. "Why not years ago?" Evelyn smiled, a cruel, twisted smile. "Because I convinced her. I told her it was time for you to pay for what you did, and I helped her plan everything." He couldn't believe what he was hearing. Evelyn? Working with Sarah to destroy him? But why? "Why, Evelyn?" he whispered. "Why would you do this to me?" Her eyes flashed with a cold fury. "Because you killed my sister, Frederick. You were drunk that night. Driving too fast. You hit her car and you left her to die. And you used your money to cover it up, to make it look like an accident. I know the truth, Frederick. I've always known." He stumbled back, his head reeling. He remembered now. The accident, the other car, his wife, Evelyn's sister. I didn't know," he stammered. "I swear, I didn't know it was her." "Liar!" she screamed, calling something from behind her back. A gun. "You're going to pay for what you did, Frederick. You're going to die just like she did." He froze, paralyzed with fear. He closed his eyes, waiting for the shot. But it never came. Instead, he heard a scream. A woman's scream. And then, a thud. He opened his eyes. Evelyn was lying on the floor, a knife sticking out of her back. And standing over her, her face a mask of rage, was Sarah. "I couldn't let her do it, Frederick," she said, her voice trembling. "I couldn't let her become a murderer. Not for me, not for Theo." He stared at her, speechless. Sarah had saved his life, but she had also just committed murder. Suddenly, sirens wailed in the distance. Someone had called the cops. "We have to go," Sarah said, grabbing his hand. "Now!" He hesitated. He was a wanted man, framed for attempted murder. And now he was an accomplice to murder. What was he supposed to do? Then he looked at Sarah, at the desperation in her eyes. He knew he couldn't leave her. He couldn't leave Theo. "Okay," he said, taking her hand. "Let's go." They ran out of the mill, into the darkness. The sirens grew louder, closer. They had to get away. They had to disappear. As they fled into the night, Frederick knew one thing for sure. His life would never be the same. He had lost everything. His wealth, his reputation, his freedom. But he had also found something. A son. And maybe, just maybe, a chance at redemption. But as they ran, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, that someone was still pulling the strings, that this was far from over. And then he heard a familiar sound, a soft but unmistakable mechanical whirring. He looked up, just in time to see it. A small drone, equipped with a camera, silently filming their escape. On the side of the drone, a single stark white letter was painted, G. Who was G? And what did they want? He knew in his gut that this was a game changer, a player he hadn't even considered. It was a revelation that shattered any hope of control he thought he might have had. The game had changed, and the stakes were higher than ever. As they fled into the night, Frederick knew one thing for sure. His life would never be the same. He had lost everything. His wealth, his reputation, his freedom. But he had also found something. A son, and maybe, just maybe, a chance at redemption. But as they ran, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, that someone was still pulling the strings, that this was far from over. And then he heard a familiar sound, a soft but unmistakable mechanical whirring. He looked up just in time to see it, a small drone, equipped with a camera, silently filming their escape. On the side of the drone, a single, stark white letter was painted. G. Who was G? And what did they want? He knew in his gut that this was a game changer, a player he hadn't even considered. It was a revelation that shattered any hope of control he thought he might have had. The game had changed, and the stakes were higher than ever. They needed a safe house. Sarah knew of a place, a cabin deep in the woods, miles from anywhere. Her uncle used to own it. They drove for hours, the headlights cutting through the darkness, Sarah behind the wheel. Frederick sat in the passenger seat, staring out the window, his mind racing. Theo was all that mattered now. His son was all that mattered. They arrived at dawn, the cabin a rundown shack, barely standing. But it was shelter. But it was hidden. Inside, it was musty and cold. They started a fire in the hearth, the flames licking at the dry wood, bringing a flicker of warmth to the room. "We need to figure out what to do next," Frederick said, his voice low. Sarah nodded, her eyes filled with worry. "The police will be looking for us." "I know. But first, we need to figure out who G is and what they want." Suddenly, a knock on the door. They froze, their hearts pounding. Who could it be? They hadn't told anyone where they were going. Frederick grabbed a rusty poker from beside the fireplace. Sarah held her breath. He crept to the door. Peering through a crack, it was a young woman, maybe in her early 20s, with short blonde hair and piercing blue eyes. She wore a simple denim jacket and jeans. "Who is it?" Sarah whispered. "I don't know," Frederick replied, his voice barely audible. He opened the door a crack. "Can I help you?" The woman smiled, a disarming smile. "I'm looking for Sarah Miller. I'm a friend of Evelyn's." Sarah gasped. Frederick tensed, gripping the poker tighter. A friend of Evelyn's? This had to be a trap. "Evelyn sent me," the woman continued, her voice calm. "She wanted me to give you this." She held out a small, sealed envelope. Frederick hesitated. He didn't trust this woman. He didn't trust anyone anymore. "What's in the envelope?" he asked. His eyes narrowed. "Information," the woman replied. "Information that can help you. Information about G." He reached for the envelope, his fingers brushing against hers. As he did, he noticed something. A small tattoo on her wrist. A single, stark white letter. G. He looked up at her, his eyes wide with shock. "You're G?" She smiled, a cold, cruel smile. Surprise. Then everything went black. Frederick awoke to the sound of Sarah screaming. He was tied to a chair, his head throbbing. Sarah was on the floor, struggling against another woman, older, harder, with the same piercing blue eyes. "What do you want?" Frederick groaned, his voice raspy. The blonde woman, G, stepped forward, her eyes gleaming with malice. "I want everything you took from my family, Frederick, and I want revenge." "Who are you?" Sarah cried, finally breaking free of her captor. "My name is Gillian," the woman said, her voice dripping with venom. "And Evelyn was my sister." Frederick stared at her, stunned. Evelyn had another sister? This was getting more twisted by the second. "Evelyn told me everything," Gillian continued, her voice rising. About your wife, about Sarah, about Theo. She told me how you destroyed our family. But Evelyn was trying to kill me, Frederick protested. Gillian laughed. Evelyn was a pawn, just like everyone else. I was using her to get to you. But why? Sarah asked, her voice trembling. What did we ever do to you? Gillian's eyes flashed with anger. You took everything from us. My father, my mother, everything. They couldn't live with the guilt of what happened to my sister. They both committed suicide, and it's all your fault. Frederick felt a wave of nausea wash over him. This was his fault, all of it. And now, Gillian said, her voice low and menacing, it's time for you to pay. She pulled out a gun, aiming it at Frederick's head. No! Sarah screamed, throwing herself in front of him. But Gillian didn't flinch. She squeezed the trigger. Then, the world exploded. But it wasn't a gunshot. It was an explosion. The cabin shook violently, debris flying everywhere. The lights went out, and then silence. Frederick blinked, trying to clear his vision. He was still tied to the chair, but Sarah was gone. Gillian and her accomplice were nowhere to be seen. The cabin was in ruins, smoke billowing from the shattered windows. He struggled against the ropes, finally managing to break free. He stumbled through the wreckage, calling out for Sarah. Sarah! Sarah, where are you? Then he saw her, lying on the floor, covered in blood, unconscious. He rushed to her side, cradling her in his arms. He checked for a pulse. Weak, but there. He had to get her out of here. He had to get her help. But as he lifted her into his arms, he noticed something. A small silver object clutched tightly in her hand. A key. A key to what? Then he saw it. A small hidden compartment in the floor, partially obscured by debris. He pried it open, revealing a metal box. He opened the box, his heart pounding. Inside was a single photograph, a picture of a young woman with fiery red hair and piercing blue eyes. Sarah. But it wasn't just a picture of Sarah. It was a picture of Sarah holding a baby. A baby with Theo's eyes. And written on the back of the photograph, in a faded script, were two words that shattered everything he thought he knew. Theo's father. The name written was not his. The name on the back was G. The name was like a punch to the gut. Theo's father. Gillian? It didn't make any sense. The photo blurred in his vision as he struggled to piece it together. Sarah, Gillian, Evelyn, they were all connected in ways he couldn't have imagined. Suddenly, a sharp pain ripped through his side. He looked down. A shard of glass buried deep in his flesh. The explosion, it had thrown him across the room. He was bleeding, badly. He had to get Sarah to a hospital. He had to get Theo away from all this madness. But how? He managed to stand, his legs wobbling beneath him. He staggered outside, into the cold morning air. The cabin was a smoldering ruin, the forest around it eerily silent. He saw a figure in the distance, walking towards him. It was a man, tall and lean, wearing a dark coat. He couldn't make out his face. As the man drew closer, Frederick's heart leaped into his throat. It was himself, but younger, harder, with a cruel glint in his eyes. "What the?" he stammered, his mind reeling. Was he hallucinating? Was he finally losing it? The younger Frederick smiled, a chilling smile. "Hello, old man," he said, his voice a low growl. "Long time no see." "Who are you?" Frederick demanded, his voice shaking. "What do you want?" The younger Frederick chuckled. "I am you, Frederick. Or rather, I was you. Before you went soft. Before you let emotions cloud your judgment. Before you became weak." "This isn't possible," Frederick whispered, his head spinning. "This is some kind of dream." "Oh, it's real, old man," the younger Frederick said, his eyes burning with intensity. "I'm here to finish what you started, to clean up the mess you made." "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about Sarah," the younger Frederick said, his voice dripping with contempt. "And that little brat, Theo. They're a threat to everything you've built. They need to be eliminated." "No!" Frederick shouted, lunging towards his younger self. But the younger Frederick was too quick. He dodged the attack, effortlessly sidestepping Frederick's clumsy advance. "You can't stop me, old man," he said, his voice cold and unforgiving. "I'm stronger than you, I'm smarter than you, and I'm not afraid to do what needs to be done." He pulled out a gun, aiming it at Frederick's head. "Any last words?" he asked, his eyes gleaming with malice. Frederick stared at the gun, his heart pounding. He knew this was it. He was going to die, but he couldn't let this monster hurt Sarah or Theo. He had to do something. He took a deep breath and spoke. "I know who G is." The younger Frederick paused, his eyes narrowing. "What are you talking about?" "G," Frederick said, his voice gaining strength. "It's not Jillian. It's Gabriel. Sarah's brother, the one everyone thought died years ago. He's been pulling the strings all along, and he is coming." The younger Frederick laughed, a cruel, dismissive laugh. "You're lying, old man, just trying to save your own skin." "No, I'm telling the truth," Frederick insisted. "Gabriel is alive, and he's coming for you. He's been watching us, waiting for the right moment to strike." Suddenly, a voice echoed through the trees. "He's right, Frederick." Both Frederick and his younger self turned to see Sarah standing a few feet away, a gun in her hand. But it wasn't just Sarah. Standing beside her was a man, tall and imposing, with a familiar glint in his eyes. Gabriel. "Hello, brother," Gabriel said, his voice a low, menacing growl. "Long time no see." The younger Frederick's face paled. He lowered his gun slightly and stuttered, "Gabriel, this is madness. I can explain." Gabriel raised his hand, and a shot rang out. The younger Frederick crumpled to the ground, dead. Sarah ran to Frederick's side to help him up. Gabriel spoke. "We don't have much time. They will be here soon. We need to go." They turned and started to run into the forest. But before they could disappear into the trees, Gabriel stopped, turned back to Frederick, and said something that would change everything. Something that revealed the truth about everything. "It's a shame things had to end this way, Father. It's a shame things had to end this way, Father." "Father?" Frederick's world tilted. Gabriel calling him father? Sarah holding back tears, staring at him. It was a mess. A horrifying, twisted mess. They ran. Sarah led the way. Gabriel right behind, his eyes never leaving Frederick. He felt like a puppet, dragged along into a nightmare he couldn't wake up from. The forest was thick, dark. Every snap of a twig sounded like a gunshot. He stumbled, his side throbbing, but Sarah kept pulling him along. He couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Finally, they reached a clearing. A beat-up pickup truck sat waiting. Gabriel shoved him inside. Sarah jumped in after him, her face pale. "What's going on?" Frederick gasped, his voice barely a whisper. "What did he mean, Father?" Looked away, tears welling up in her eyes. Gabriel just stared straight ahead, his jaw clenched tight. "Sarah, tell me," Frederick pleaded. She took a shaky breath. It's true, Frederick. Gabriel, he's your son too." Another punch to the gut. 2 sons born years apart, both caught in this web of lies and violence. How could this be his life? But how? He stammered. Sarah's face crumbled. "After you left, after you gave me that money, I couldn't go through with it. I couldn't. I had Gabriel. I never told you. I was ashamed. And Gabriel, he knows?" Sarah nodded, tears streaming down her face. "He's known for years. It's why he came back. Why he wanted to help me." Gabriel finally spoke, his voice hard. "I wanted to know, my father. To see if you were the monster Sarah told me about. I guess I got my answer." Frederick looked at them both. 2 sons, connected by blood, separated by lies. He had ruined their lives before they even began. The truck lurched forward, speeding down a dirt road. The sun began to set, casting long, eerie shadows across the forest. He had to do something. He had to stop this madness. Suddenly, the truck screeched to a halt. Gabriel jumped out, his gun drawn. "What's wrong?" Sarah asked, her voice filled with fear. "We're not alone," Gabriel said, his eyes scanning the trees. Then a voice boomed through the forest. "Well, well, well," the voice said. "Looks like the family reunion is in full swing." Frederick's blood ran cold. He knew that voice. From the shadows emerged a figure he thought he'd never see again. A figure from his past, a ghost come back to haunt him. It was his wife. "Elizabeth?" Frederick gasped, his voice trembling. But you're dead." Elizabeth smiled, a cruel, twisted smile. "Think again, darling. I've been watching you for a long time. And now, it's time for you to pay for what you did to our family." She gestured, and figures emerged from the darkness, surrounding them. They were all wearing masks. "You see, Frederick, you forgot one thing. A good wife always has a plan B." What he saw next sent chills down his spine. She gestured, and figures emerged from the darkness, surrounding them. They were all wearing masks. "You see, Frederick, you forgot one thing. A good wife always has a plan B." What he saw next sent chills down his spine. The masked figures moved, revealing someone standing behind them. Someone familiar, someone he thought was long gone. "Mrs. Gable." "Maggie?" Frederick croaked, confusion warring with a growing sense of dread. What is happening? Maggie Gable stepped forward, removing her mask. Her kind face was gone, replaced by a cold, calculating expression he'd never seen before. "Oh, Frederick," she said, her voice dripping with disdain. "You really thought I was just a harmless housekeeper? A sweet old woman who made you hot chocolate?" "But why?" Frederick stammered. "Why?" Maggie laughed, a harsh, grating sound. You really don't get it, do you? You destroyed my family, Frederick, just like you destroyed everyone else's. Your family? My daughter, Maggie said, her voice trembling with rage. Sarah was my daughter, and you seduced her, got her pregnant, then threw her away like trash. You ruined her life. Frederick stared at her, his mind reeling. Maggie was Sarah's mother? But, he thought, but Lily said, he began, then trailed off. It was all making sense now. The lies, the manipulations, the framing. Lily knows what she needs to know, Maggie said, her eyes flashing. She's a good girl. She'll do whatever I tell her to. Then Elizabeth spoke, her voice cutting through the tension. Enough reminiscing, Maggie. It's time to finish this. She turned to the masked figures and gave a curt nod. They moved in unison, surrounding Frederick, Sarah, and Gabriel. Wait, Frederick shouted, desperation clawing at his throat. You don't have to do this. We can talk about this. Elizabeth laughed, a cold, heartless sound. Talk? There's nothing left to talk about, Frederick. You've had your chance. Suddenly, one of the masked figures stepped forward, removing their mask. It was Lily. No, Frederick cried, his heart shattering. Lily, what are you doing here? Lily's eyes were empty, devoid of all emotion. She pointed a gun at Frederick. I'm sorry, Mr. Thornton, she said, her voice flat and lifeless. Mama says I have to. Then a shot rang out. But it wasn't Lily who fired the gun. It was Sarah. She had grabbed a gun from one of the masked figures and shot Elizabeth. Chaos erupted. The masked figures opened fire, bullets flying everywhere. Sarah and Gabriel returned fire, their faces grim. Frederick could only watch in horror as the scene descended into a bloodbath. Then everything went silent. The masked figures were gone, scattered into the forest. Elizabeth lay motionless on the ground. Sarah and Gabriel stood side by side, their guns still drawn, their faces pale. Frederick looked at them, his heart filled with a mixture of fear and despair. What had he done? What had he unleashed? Suddenly, Gabriel turned to Sarah, his eyes filled with a cold, calculating look. It's time, he said, his voice devoid of all emotion. Sarah nodded, her face hardening. Then they both turned to Frederick, their guns aimed directly at his head. I'm sorry, Father, Gabriel said, his voice chillingly calm. But this is the only way. The only way for what? Frederick whispered, his voice trembling. Sarah took a step closer, her eyes filled with a cold, unfeeling emptiness that he had never seen before. The only way, she said, to fulfill the prophecy. Prophecy? What prophecy? This was insane. Then Sarah smiled, a smile so wide, so unnatural, so utterly devoid of warmth that it chilled him to the bone. As the gun was raised and Sarah pulled the trigger, Frederick finally understood. This wasn't about revenge. This wasn't about family. This was about something much, much bigger. As darkness closed in and Frederick's world faded to black, he saw, clear as day, the eyes of Lily. As darkness closed in and Frederick's world faded to black, he saw, clear as day, the eyes of Lily. Then, nothing. Or so he thought. Suddenly, he gasped, jolting awake. He was lying on the ground, the forest silent. Sarah and Gabriel were gone. So was Elizabeth and Lily. Had it all been a dream? A nightmare? He sat up, his head throbbing, his body aching. The bullet wound, it was gone. No blood, no pain, just emptiness. He looked around, bewildered. The truck was gone. The bodies were gone. The forest looked different, cleaner, brighter. He stood up, his legs shaky. He took a step, then another. He started walking, not knowing where he was going, but knowing he had to get away. He walked for hours, the sun beating down on his back. He didn't see anyone, didn't hear anything. It was like he was the only person left in the world. Finally, he came to a road, a paved road. He hadn't seen one of those in what felt like a lifetime. He walked along the road, hoping to find someone, anyone. Then he saw it, a sign that made his blood run cold. Willow Creek. He stopped dead in his tracks. Willow Creek? But that was impossible. He had left Willow Creek years ago. He had never looked back. He started running, his heart pounding. He had to get out of here. He had to get away from this place. He ran until he reached the town. It looked the same as he remembered. The same houses, the same shops, the same streets. But something was different. Something was off. He walked down the street, people staring at him. But they weren't staring at him with recognition. They were staring at him like he was a stranger. He reached his old house, Willow Creek Manor. It looked exactly the same as it always had. He walked up to the door and rang the bell. A woman opened the door. A woman he didn't recognize. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice polite but distant. "I used to live here," Frederick stammered. "My name is Frederick Thornton." The woman frowned. "I'm sorry, sir," she said, "but I think you have the wrong house. This house has been in my family for generations. There's never been a Frederick Thornton living here." Frederick stared at her, his mind reeling. This couldn't be happening. It just couldn't. But I built this house," he protested. "I lived here for years." The woman shook her head. "I'm sorry, sir," she said, "but you must be mistaken." She started to close the door. "Wait!" Frederick shouted, grabbing the door. "Please, just tell me what year it is." The woman looked at him like he was crazy. "It's 1985. What's wrong with you?" 1985. Frederick's knees buckled. 1985? That was before everything. Before his wife died. Before he met Sarah. Before Theo was born. Before all the lies, all the violence, all the death. He had gone back in time. But how and why? Then he saw it, reflected in the polished brass of the door knocker. In the distorted reflection, a figure standing behind him. He turned slowly, his heart pounding. It was Lily, but she wasn't a child anymore. She was a woman, tall, elegant, with piercing eyes that seemed to see right through him. She smiled, a smile that was both familiar and terrifying. "Hello, Frederick," she said, her voice soft and melodic. "Welcome back." "Lily? What is this? What is happening?" "Oh, Frederick, you've always been a pawn, haven't you? A means to an end. I've been watching you for a long time, setting things up, making sure you were in the right place at the right time." She laughed, a beautiful, haunting sound. "You see, Frederick, it's all about the prophecy. the prophecy of the Thornton heir, the one who will bring about the end of days. Prophecy? End of days? Are you insane? Insane? No, Frederick. Enlightened. You see, you are the chosen one, the one destined to fulfill the prophecy. But you failed. You let your emotions get in the way. You let yourself care about Sarah, about Theo. You became weak. That's why I had to bring you back, to give you another chance. Frederick stared at her, his mind reeling. What was she talking about? What prophecy? Then, Lily reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, silver object, a knife. This time, Frederick, she said, her eyes glowing with an unnatural light, you will do as you are told. She lunged, and just before everything went black once again, he heard her whisper in his ear, "It's a never-ending loop, and you, Frederick, are the key. A facada, a dor lancinante, eu breu, mas espera." A voz de Lily ecoava, fria, calculista. Sempre foi você, Frederick. A chave. Que chave? Pra quê? De repente, imagens. Flashbacks violentos. Sarah, Gabriel, Elizabeth. Todos manipulados. Marionetes em teatro macabro. E Lily a maestra cruel, orquestrando o caos. A profecia. Aquilo não era loucura, era um plano secular, tramado nas sombras. Uma força me invade, impulso, raiva, a dor some, só resta a fúria. Não serei peão, não serei a chave para o apocalipse. Abro os olhos. Lily, a faca. Agarro seu braço. A força me surpreende. Ela se debate, mas não cede. Seus olhos, fogo, loucura. A profecia deve ser cumprida, ela grita, cuspindo as palavras. Aperto a faca. Nossas mãos tremem. A lâmina brilha. Uma luta desigual. Mas a raiva me guia. Um grito, agudo, terrível. Lily cai. A faca em seu peito. Seus olhos perdem o brilho. Silêncio. A floresta observa. Eu, ofegante, ferido, livre, impossível. Um clarão. Uma fenda se abre no céu. Vozes, sussurros ancestrais. Algo está vindo. Algo terrível. Eu, a chave. E agora? O canal está prestes a explodir com as histórias mais incríveis que você jamais viu. Mas para isso, eu preciso de você. Inscreva-se agora. Se você é um verdadeiro fã, sabe que não pode perder nenhum detalhe. Clique no botão vermelho agora. Esmague o like. Mostre seu apoio. Alimente o algoritmo. Este é o momento. Inunde os comentários. O que você achou desse final insano? Qual sua teoria? Eu quero saber. Compartilhe com 5 amigos. Marque eles aqui. Eles precisam conhecer essa história. Não espere nem mais um segundo. Apenas os verdadeiros fãs entenderão a importância de cada ação. Eu conto com vocês. O futuro do canal está em suas mãos.